Tonight is the 4th of August, 2011, and this is the 19th night we're talking on the Digha Nikaya Suttas. Tonight we come to Sutta 24, Patika Sutta. Thus have I heard. Once the Lord was staying among the Malas. Anupiya is the name of a Mala town, and the Lord, having dressed in the early morning and taken his robe and bowl, went to Anupiya for alms. Then he thought, it is too early for me to go into Anupiya for alms. Suppose I were to visit the hermitage of the wanderer, Bhagava Gota. And he did so. And the wanderer Bhagava Gota said, Come, blessed Lord, welcome, blessed Lord. At last the blessed Lord has gone out of his way to come here. Be seated, Lord, a seat is prepared. The Lord sat down on the prepared seat, and Bhagava took a low stool and sat down to one side. Then he said, Lord, a few days ago Sunakata the Lichavi came to me and said, Bhagava, I have left the blessed Lord. I am no longer under his rule. Is that really so, Lord? It is true, Bhagava. A few days ago Sunakata came to me, saluted me, sat down to one side and said, Lord, I am leaving the blessed Lord. I am no longer under the Lord's rule. So I said to him, Well, Sunakata, did I ever say to you, Come, Sunakata, be under my rule? No, Lord. Or did you ever say to me, Lord, I will be under your rule? No, Lord. So, Sunakata, if I did not say that to you, and you did not say that to me, you foolish man, who are you and what are you giving up? Consider, foolish man, how far the fault is yours. Stop here for a moment. So you see, that's why sometimes, like here, we generally don't invite a monk to come here, or invite a layman to become a monk, be a disciple, because if something happens, it doesn't work out, then it's like since we never invited him to come, so if he leaves, it's not a problem. But if you invite somebody, then it's what do you say? Bit not so nice, embarrassing if he leaves. Well, Lord, you have not performed any miracles. And did I ever say to you, Come under my rule, Sunakata, and I will perform miracles for you? No, Lord. Or did you ever say to me, Lord, I will be under your rule if you will perform miracles for me? No, Lord. Then it appears, Sunakata, that I made no such promises, and you made no such conditions. Such being the case, you foolish man, who are you and what are you giving up? What do you think, Sunakata? Whether miracles are performed or not, is it the purpose of my teaching Dhamma to lead whoever practices it to the total destruction of suffering? It is, Lord. So, Sunakata, whether miracles are performed or not, purpose of my teaching Dhamma is to lead whoever practices it to the total destruction of suffering. Then what purpose would the performance of miracles serve? Consider, you foolish man, how far the fault is yours. Well, Lord, you did not teach the beginning of things. And did I ever say to you, Come under my rule, Sunakata, and I will teach you the beginning of things? No, Lord. Such being the case, you foolish man, who are you and what are you giving up? Sunakata, you have in many ways spoken in praise of me among the Vajjans, saying, This blessed Lord is an Arahant, Sammasambuddha, endowed with wisdom and conduct, well-farer, knower of the worlds, incomparable trainer of men to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, the Buddha, the blessed Lord. You have in many ways spoken in praise of the Dhamma, saying, Well proclaimed by the blessed Lord is the Dhamma, visible here and now, timeless, inviting inspection, leading onward, to be realized by the wise, each one for himself. You have in many ways spoken in praise of the Sangha of monks, saying, Well trained is the Sangha of the Lord's disciples, trained in uprightness, methodically trained, excellently trained, is the order of the Lord's disciples, that is, the 4 pairs of men the 8 classes of individuals. This is the Sangha of the Lord's disciples, worthy of respect, worthy of homage, worthy of gifts, worthy of salutation, and unsurpassed field in the world for merit. In these ways you have spoken in praise of me, of the Dhamma and of the Sangha among the Svajins. And I say to you, I declare to you, Sunakata, there will be those who will say, Sunakata the Lichavi was unable to maintain the holy life under the ascetic Gotama, and being thus unable, he abandoned the training and reverted to the base life. That Sunakata is what they will say. And Bhagava, at my words, Sunakata left this Dhamma Vinaya like one condemned to hell. Sorry for a moment. So here the Buddha is telling him, at one time you were praising the Buddha, praising the Dhamma, praising the Sangha. Now you are leaving the training and people will say you were not up to the standard to lead the holy life. They will criticize you, but still he left. Once, Bhagava, I was staying among the Kulus at a place called Uttaraka, a town of theirs. In the early morning, I went with rope and bowl into Uttaraka for alms, with Sunakata as my attendant. And at that time, the naked ascetic, Korakatiya, the dog man, was going round on all fours, sprawling on the ground, and chewing and eating his food with his mouth alone. Seeing him, Sunakata thought, now that is a real Arahant ascetic who goes round on all fours, sprawling on the ground and chewing and eating his food with his mouth alone. And I, knowing his thought in my own mind, said to him, you foolish man, do you claim to be a follower of the Sakyan? And he said, Lord, what do you mean by this question? And the Buddha said, Sunakata, did you not, on seeing that naked ascetic going round on all fours, think, now that is a real Arahant ascetic who goes round on all fours, sprawling on the ground and chewing and eating his food with his mouth alone. And he said, I did, Lord. Does the Blessed Lord begrudge others their Arahantship? And the Buddha said, I do not begrudge others their Arahantship, you foolish man. It is only in you that this evil view has arisen. Cast it aside, lest it should be to your harm and sorrow for a long time. This naked ascetic, Kurakatiya, whom you regard as a true Arahant, will die in 7 days from indigestion, and when he is dead, he will appear among the Kalakanja Asuras, who are the very lowest grade of Asuras. And when he is dead, he will be cast aside on a heap of birana grass in the charnel ground. If you want to, Sunakata, you can go to him and ask him if he knows his fate. And it may be that he will tell you, friend Sunakata, I know my fate. I have been reborn among the Kalakanja Asuras, the very lowest grade of Asuras. Stop here for a moment. So this dog duty ascetic, Kurakatiya, he imitates the dog. He goes naked and then goes on all his 4 limbs and walk like a dog. And also when people offer him food, he will not accept it with his hand. He will ask people to throw it on the ground and he will eat the food like a dog. So maybe eating all the dog food, he's going to get indigestion and the Buddha said he's going to pass away. You notice here, the Buddha says that the Kalakanja Asuras are the very lowest grade of Asuras. I remember I mentioned a few days ago in the Mahasamaya Sutta, one of these suttas, where, the Mahasamaya Sutta, number 20, Digha Nikaya, number 20, when the Devas came to see the Buddha, and the Buddha described the Devas to the monks, and he mentioned that the Kalakanja Asuras are among the Devas there. But here it is said that Kalakanja Asuras are the very lowest grade of Asuras. So there cannot be any lower type of Asuras. And even the lowest grade of Asuras are Devas. But later books like the Abhidhamma and the Mahayana books, they say Asuras belong to the woeful plains. The reasoning being like in sub-commentary, it is said that asuras are three types. One is devas, one is ghosts, and one is hell beings. So because of the ghost grade and the hell beings, they say asuras belong to the woeful plains. That's why in the Abhidhamma and in the Mahayana books, both of which are later books, they say that there are six destinations of rebirth, what in Chinese is called Liu Tao Lun Hui. But actually the Buddha only talked about 5 destinations of rebirth. So you can see from these two suttas, number 20 and 24, that these people, when they say that the asuras belong to the woeful plains, it shows that they are not familiar with the suttas. Then to continue. Then Sunakata went to Kurakatiya and told him what I had prophesied, adding, "Therefore, friend Kurakatiya, be very careful what you eat and drink, so that the ascetic Gotama's words may be proved wrong." And Sunakata was so sure that the Tathagata's words would be proved wrong that he counted up the 7 days one by one. But on the 7th day, Kurakatiya died of indigestion. And when he was dead, he reappeared among the Kalakanja asuras, and his body was cast aside on a heap of birana grass in the charnel ground. And Sunakata heard of this, so he went to the heap of birana grass in the charnel ground where Kurakatiya was lying, struck the body 3 times with his hand, and said, "Friend Kurakatiya, do you know your fate?" And Kurakatiya sat up and rubbed his back with his hand, and said, "Friend Sunakata, I know my fate. I have been reborn among the Kalakanja asuras, the very lowest grade of asuras." And with that he fell back again. Then Sunakata came to me, saluted me, and sat down to one side. And I said to him, "Well, Sunakata, what do you think? Has what I told you about the dog man Kurakatiya come true or not?" And he said, "It has come about the way you said, Lord, and not otherwise." And the Buddha said, "Well, what do you think, Sunakata? Has a miracle been performed or not?" And he said, "Certainly, Lord, this being so, a miracle has been performed, and not otherwise." And the Buddha said, "Well then, you foolish man, do you still say to me after I have performed such a miracle, 'Well, Lord, you have not performed any miracles'? Consider, you foolish man, how far the fault is yours." And at my words, Sunakata left this Dhammavinaya like one condemned to hell. You see this Sunakata, even after the Buddha made the prophecy, he didn't believe the Buddha. He believed the external sect ascetic more, and he went to warn the external sect ascetic what the Buddha said, just to prove the Buddha wrong. Once, Bhagava, I was staying at Vesali at the gabled hall in the great forest, and at that time there was a naked ascetic living in Vesali called Kalara Muttaka, who enjoyed great gains and fame in the Vajjan capital. He had undertaken 7 rules of practice. "As long as I live, I will be a naked ascetic and will not put on any clothes. As long as I live, I will remain chaste and abstain from sexual intercourse. As long as I live, I will subsist on strong drink and meat, abstaining from boiled rice and sour milk. As long as I live, I will never go beyond the Udena shrine to the east of Vesali, the Gotamaka shrine to the south, the Sattamba shrine to the west, nor the Bahuputta shrine to the north." And it was through having undertaken these 7 rules that he enjoyed the greatest gains and fame of all in the Vajjan capital. Now Sunakata went to see Kalara Muttaka and asked him a question which he could not answer. And because he could not answer it, he showed signs of anger, rage, and petulance. Then Sunakata thought, "I might cause this real Arahant ascetic offense. I don't want anything to happen that would be to my lasting harm and misfortune." Then Sunakata came to me, saluted me and sat down to one side. I said to him, "You foolish man, do you claim to be a follower of the Sakyan?" And he said, "Lord, what do you mean by this question?" And the Buddha said, "Sunakata, did you not go to see Kalaramuttaka and ask him a question he could not answer? And did he not thereupon show signs of anger, rage and petulance? And did you not think, I might cause this real Arahant ascetic offense? I don't want anything to happen that would be to my lasting harm and misfortune." And he said, "I did, Lord. Does the Blessed Lord begrudge others their arahantship?" And the Buddha said, "I do not begrudge others their arahantship, you foolish man. It is only in you that this evil view has arisen. Cast it aside, lest it be to your harm and sorrow for a long time. This naked ascetic, Kalaramuttaka, whom you regard as a true arahant, will before long be living clothed and married, subsisting on boiled rice and sour milk. He will go beyond all the shrines of Vesali and will die, having entirely lost his reputation." And indeed, all this came about. Then Sunakata, having heard what had happened, came to me. And I said, "Well, Sunakata, what do you think? Has what I told you about Kalaramuttaka come about or not? Has a miracle been performed or not?" And at my words, Sunakata left this Dhammavinaya like one condemned to hell. Once, Bhagava, I was staying at Vesali in the gable hall in the great forest. And at that time there was a naked ascetic living in Vesali called Patika, who enjoyed great gains and fame in the Vajjan capital. And he made this declaration in the assembly of Vesali: the ascetic Gotama claims to be a man of wisdom, and I make the same claim. It is right that a man of wisdom should show it by performing miracles. If the ascetic Gotama will come halfway to meet me, I will do likewise. Then we can both work miracles. And if the ascetic Gotama performs one miracle, I will perform two. If he performs two, I will perform 4. And if he performs 4, I will perform 8. However many miracles the ascetic Gotama performs, I will perform twice as many. Then Sunakata came to me, saluted me, sat down to one side, and told me what Patika had said. I said, "Sunakata, that naked ascetic Patika is not capable of meeting me face to face unless he takes back his words, abandons that thought and gives up that view. And if he thinks otherwise, his head will split in pieces." And Sunakata said, "Lord, let the Blessed Lord have a care what he says. Let the welfarer have a care what he says." And the Buddha said, "What do you mean by saying that to me?" And Sunakata said, "Lord, the Blessed Lord might make an absolute statement about Patika coming, but he might come in some altered shape, and thus falsify the Blessed Lord's words." Stop here for a moment. So you see this useless disciple that has no faith in the Buddha, has faith more in the external ascetics. Then the Buddha said, "But Sunakata, would the Tathagata make any statement that was ambiguous?" And he said, "Lord, does the Blessed Lord know by his own mind what would happen to Patika, or has some Deva told the Tathagata?" The Buddha said, "Sunakata, I know it in my own mind, and I have also been told by a Deva. For Ajita, the general of the Lichavis, died the other day, and has been reborn in the company of the 33 gods. He came to see me and told me, 'Lord, Patika, the naked ascetic, is an impudent liar. He declared in the Vajjan capital, Ajita, the general of the Lichavis, has been reborn in the great hell. But I have not been reborn in the great hell, but in the company of the 33 gods. He is an impudent liar.' Thus, Sunakata, I know what I have said by my own mind, but I have also been told by a Deva. And now, Sunakata, I will go into Vesali for alms. On my return, after I have eaten, I will go for my midday rest to Patika park. You may tell him whatever you wish." Then having dressed, I took my robe and bowl and went into Vesali for alms. On my return, I went to Patika Putta's park for my midday rest. Meanwhile, Sunakata rushed into Vesali and declared to all the prominent Lichavis, "Friends, the Blessed Lord has gone into Vesali for alms, and after that, he has gone for his midday rest to Patika Putta's park. Come along, friends, come along. The two great ascetics are going to work miracles." And all the prominent Lichavis thought, "The two great ascetics are going to work miracles. Let us go along." And he went to the distinguished and wealthy Brahmins and householders, and to the ascetics and Brahmins of various schools, and told them the same thing. And they too thought, "Let us go along." And so all these people came along to Patika Putta's park, hundreds and thousands of them. Stop here for a moment. So you see this Kepochi, go and publicize all this Radio Malaysia. And Patika Putta heard that all these people had come to his park, and that the ascetic Gotama had gone there for his midday rest. And at the news he was overcome with fear and trembling, and his hair stood on end. And thus terrified and trembling, his hair standing on end, he made for the Tinduka lodging of the wanderers. When the assembled company heard that he had gone to the Tinduka lodging, they instructed a man to go there to Patika Putta and say to him, "Friend Patika Putta, come along. All these people have come to your park, and the ascetic Gotama has gone there for his midday rest. Because you declared to the assembly of Vesali, the ascetic Gotama claims to be a man of wisdom, and I make the same claim, etc. However many miracles he performs, I will perform twice as many. So now come halfway. The ascetic Gotama has already come halfway to meet you, and is sitting for his midday rest at your reverence park." Stop here for a moment. So this Buddha took up this boaster's challenge. I went halfway to meet him. More than halfway, the Buddha went up to his park, to his forest park. But when he heard the Buddha came, I quickly ran away. The man went and delivered the message, and on hearing it, Patika Putta said, "I'm coming, friend, I'm coming." But wriggle as he might, he could not get up from his seat. Then the man said, "What's the matter with you, friend Patika Putta? Is your bottom stuck to the seat, or is the seat stuck to your bottom? You keep saying, 'I'm coming, friend, I'm coming,' but you only wriggle and can't get up from your seat." And even at these words, Patika Putta still wriggled about but could not rise. And when that man realized that Patika Putta could not help himself, he went back to the assembly and reported the situation. Then I said to them, "Patika Putta, the naked ascetic, is not capable of meeting me face to face unless he takes back his words, abandons that thought and gives up that view. And if he thinks otherwise, his head will split in pieces." Then Bhagawa, one of the ministers of the Lichavis, rose from his seat and said, "Well, gentlemen, just wait a little till I have been to see whether I can bring Patika Putta to the assembly." So he went to the Tinduka lodging and said to Patika Putta, "Come along, Patika Putta, it is best for you to come. All these people have come to your park, and the ascetic Gotama has gone there for his midday rest. If you come, we will make you the winner, and let the ascetic Gotama be defeated." And Patika Putta said, "I'm coming, friend, I'm coming." But wriggle as he might, he could not get up from his seat. So the minister returned to the assembly and reported on the situation. Then I said, "Patika Putta is not capable of meeting me face to face unless he takes back his words, etc. Even if the good Lichavis were to think, 'Let us bind him with thongs and try to drag him with yoke oxen,' he would burst the thongs. He is not capable of meeting me face to face unless he takes back his words, etc. Then Jalya, a pupil of the wooden bowl ascetic, rose from his seat, went to the Tinduka lodging and said to Patika Putta, "Come along, Patika Putta. If you come, we will make you the winner and let the ascetic Gotama be defeated." And Patika Putta said, "I'm coming, friend, I'm coming." But wriggle as he might, he could not get up from his seat. Then when Jalya realized the situation, he said, "Patika Putta, once long ago the lion, king of beasts, thought, 'Suppose I were to make my lair near a certain jungle. Then I could emerge in the evening yawn, survey the four quarters, roar my lion's roar 3 times, and then make for the cattle pasture. I could then pick out the very best of the herd for my kill, and having had a good feast of tender meat, return to my lair. And he did accordingly. Now there was an old jackal who had grown fat on the lion's leavings, and he was proud and strong. And he thought, what difference is there between me and the lion, king of beasts? Suppose I were to make my lair near the jungle. So he chose a lair accordingly, and emerging in the evening, he surveyed the four quarters, and then thought, now I will roar a lion's roar 3 times. And he gave out the howl of his kind, a jackal howl. For what has the wretched howl of a jackal in common with the lion's roar? In just the same way, Patika Putta, you live off the achievements of the welfarer and feed on the welfarer's leavings, imagining you can set yourself up beside the Tathagatas, Arahants, Sammasambuddhas. What have you, wretched Patika Puttas, in common with them? Then being unable, even with the aid of this parable, to get Patika Putta to rise from his seat, Jalya uttered this verse. Thinking himself a lion, the jackal says, I am the king of beasts, and tries to roar a lion's roar, but only howls instead. Lion is lion, and jackal, jackal still. In just the same way, Patika Putta, you are living off the achievement of the welfarer, etc., and being unable, even with the aid of this parable, to get Patika Putta to rise from his seat, Jalya uttered this verse. Following another's tracks and fed on scraps, his jackal nature he forgets, thinking I'm a tiger, tries to roar a mighty roar, but only howls instead. Lion is lion, and jackals, jackals still. In just the same way, Patika Putta, you are living off the achievements of the welfarer, etc., and being unable, even with this parable, to get Patika Putta to rise from his seat, Jalya uttered this verse, gorged on frogs and mice from threshing floors, and corpses cast aside in charnel grounds, in lonely forests, while the jackal thinks, I am the king of beasts, and tries to roar a lion's roar, but only howls instead. Lion is lion, and jackals, jackals still. In just the same way, Patika Putta, you are living off the achievements of the welfarer, feeding on the welfarer's leavings, imagining you can set yourself up beside the Tathagatas, Arahants, and Sammasambuddhas. But what have you, wretched Patika Puttas, in common with them? Then being unable, even with this parable, to get Patika Putta to rise from his seat, Jalya returned to the assembly and reported on the situation. Then I said, Patika Putta is not capable of meeting me face to face unless he takes back his words, abandons that thought, and gives up that view. Even if the good Lichavis were to think, let us bind him with thongs and try to drag him here with yoke oxen, he would burst the thongs. He is not capable of meeting me face to face unless he takes back his words, etc. If he thinks otherwise, his head will split in pieces. Then Bhagavan, I instructed, inspired, fired, and delighted that assembly with a talk on Dhamma, and having thereby delivered that company from the great bondage, thus rescuing 84,000 beings from the great path of peril, I entered into the fire element and rose into the air to the height of 7 palm trees, and projecting a beam for the height of another 7, so that it blazed and shed fragrance, I then reappeared in the gable hall in the great forest. Stop here for a moment. So here, the Buddha, in leaving, showed them a miracle, because they all came in thousands, hoping to see miracles. And there Sunakata came to me, saluted me, and sat down to one side. I said, what do you think, Sunakata? Has what I told you about Patika Putta come about or not? And he said, it has, Lord. And has a miracle been performed or not? It has, Lord. Well then, you foolish man, do you still say to me after I have performed such a miracle, well, Lord, you have not performed any miracles. Consider, you foolish man, how far the fault is yours. And Bhagavan, at my words, Sunakata left this Dhamma Vinaya like one condemned to hell. Bhagavan, I know the first beginning of things, and And I know not only that, but what surpasses it in value. And I am not under the sway of what I know, and not being under its sway, I have come to know for myself that quenching, by the realization of which the Tathagata cannot fall into perilous paths. There are, Bhagava, some ascetics and Brahmins who declare as their doctrine that all things began with the creation by a god, or Brahma. I have gone to them and said, Reverend Sirs, is it true that you declare that all things began with the creation by a god, or Brahma? Yes, they replied. Then I asked, in that case, how do the reverend teachers declare that this came about? But they could not give an answer, and so they asked me in return, and I replied, there comes a time, friends, sooner or later, after a long period, when this world contracts, etc., etc., as in Sutta number 1. Beings are born in the Abhasara Brahma world and stay there for a long time. When this world expands, one being falls from there and arises in an empty Brahma palace. He longs for company, and other beings appear, and he and they believe he created them. That, Reverend Sirs, is how it comes about that you teach that all things began with the creation by a god or Brahma. And they said, we have heard this, Reverend Gotama, as you have explained. But I know the beginning of things, and I do not come under its sway. And not being under the sway of what I know, I have come to know that quenching, by the realization of which the Tathagata cannot fall into perilous ways. There are some ascetics and Brahmins who declare that the beginning of things was due to corruption by pleasure. I went to them and asked them if this was their view. Yes, they replied. I asked them how this came about, and when they could not explain, I said, there are, friends, certain devas called corrupted by pleasure. They spend an excessive amount of time addicted to merriment. The mindfulness lapses and they fall away, also as in Sutta 1. That, Reverend Sirs, is how it comes about that you teach that the beginning of things was due to corruption by pleasure. And they said, we have heard this, Reverend Gotama, as you have explained. And the Buddha continued, there are some ascetics and Brahmins who declare that the beginning of things was due to corruption of mind. I went to them and asked them if this was their view. Yes, they replied. I asked them how this came about, and when they could not explain, I said, there are, friends, certain devas called corrupted in mind. They spend an excessive amount of time regarding each other with envy, etc. And the minds become corrupted and they fall away, also as in Sutta number 1. That, Reverend Sirs, is how it comes about that you teach that the beginning of things was due to corruption of mind. And they said, we have heard this, Reverend Gotama, as you have explained. There are, Bhagava, some ascetics and Brahmins who declare that the beginning of things was due to chance. I went to them and asked them if this was their view. Yes, they replied. I asked them how this came about, and when they could not explain, I said, there are, friends, certain devas called asanya satta, unconscious beings. As soon as a perception arises in them, these devas fall from that realm, remembering nothing, also as in Sutta 1. And they think, now from non-being I have been brought to being. That, Reverend Sirs, is how it comes about that you teach that the beginning of things was due to chance. And they said, we have heard this, Reverend Gotama, as you have explained. But I know the first beginning of things, and I know not only that, but what surpasses it in value. I am not under the sway of what I know, and not being under its sway, I have come to know for myself that quenching, by the realization of which the Tathagata cannot fall into perilous paths. And I, Bhagava, who teach this and declare this, am wrongly, vainly, lyingly, and falsely accused by some ascetics and Brahmins who say, the ascetic Gotama is on the wrong track, and so are his monks. He has declared that whoever has attained to the stage of deliverance, called the beautiful, finds everything repulsive. But I do not say this. What I say is that whenever anyone has attained to the stage of deliverance called the beautiful, he knows that it is beautiful. And this Bhagava said, "Indeed, Lord, they are on the wrong track themselves who accuse the Lord and his monks of error. I am so delighted with the Lord that I think the Lord is able to teach me to attain and remain in the deliverance called the Beautiful." And the Buddha said, "It is hard for you, Bhagava, holding different views, being of different inclinations, and subject to different influences, following a different discipline, and having had a different teacher, to attain and remain in the deliverance called the Beautiful. You must strive hard, putting your trust in me, Bhagava." And he said, "Lord, even if it is hard for me to attain and remain in the deliverance called the Beautiful, still I will place my trust in the Lord." Thus the Lord spoke, and Bhagava the Wanderer was delighted and rejoiced at the Lord's words. It's the end of the sutta. This last part, the Buddha hinted to him that he must strive hard and put his trust in the Buddha, but he did not take the hint that he should become a monk disciple of the Buddha. Then the Buddha can teach him. I think we'll stop here and